Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening.
A very important choice is fast approaching me, where I think I've whittled the decision down to 4 phones. The Pixel 9a, the Samsung A56, the Nothing Phone 3a Pro, or the iPhone 16e. And I've been testing all of these over the past few weeks, and it is quite an important decision because to me, this decides whether my son's first phone is either an iPhone or an Android phone. So throwing him deep into the, inevitable Apple ecosystem, or with an Android phone, albeit the Samsung or Pixel ecosystems, or nothing, because it's a great fun option as well. So I thought I'd bring you along with me in this video where I try to decide which phone is the right one for me, in the hope that it helps you also decide for yourself. Now, first up is pricing. Now, with the Pixel 9, this starts at $499 with 128 gigs of storage and 8 gig of memory. The Samsung A56 also $499, but with 256 gig of storage and 8 gig of memory. The Nothing Phone 3a Pro at $449, also with 256 gig of storage, but with 12 gigs of memory. And including this here, the iPhone 16e, which is Apple's entry-level iPhone, I guess we can call it, which is priced at a little bit more at $599 for 128 gigs of storage with 8 gig of memory. Now, those are the headline figures, but that isn't everything to take into account here when buying or perhaps upgrading your phone. Now, this is definitely going to be more nuanced depending on which country you're buying from. I often hear stories that Samsung have incredible trade-in deals over in the US, which never ever make their way over here into the UK. But I'm going to run you through the current trade-in deals that I'm seeing anyway, because I either have a Pixel 5a or a Samsung A52 to trade in from a few years ago, so we can see what that does to the pricing. Now, straight up with the Pixel 9a, I'm going to get a £25 store credit and also up to £415 trade-in. So let's just see what that really means for my devices. Well, the Pixel 5a that I bought a few years ago, refurbished for just £200, I can actually get £260 for trade-in, which is just nuts, incredible. Yep, that sounds great. And even for the Samsung A52, again, I bought this for about £200 a few years ago. I get £205 for trade-in, which is about what I paid for this phone again a few years back. So those are both very solid trade-in prices, which would then bring the Pixel 9a down to either £239 or £294, depending on which phone that I trade in. Now, over to Samsung now. And very strange, they don't let me trade in the A52, very, very bizarre since that's their own phone, or the Pixel 5a. So all I'm going to get here is their £100 back as like a generic any phone trade-in offer, which they offer at the moment, which then brings the A56 down to £399. Moving on to Apple now. Good old Apple doesn't care about anything unless it's another iPhone, so no deals to be had there whatsoever with my current phones I've got. And Nothing also doesn't offer any trade-ins whatsoever. Now, beyond the trade-in deals, there are extra discounts to be had. If you use the Samsung app, then you can also get an additional 5%, and you also get discounts on other accessories, chargers, phone cases, those kind of things. Nothing also offers 10% off of audio and 40% off of other accessories when buying a 3a Pro. But honestly, all of these like deals and all the discounts change constantly all the time, so I'm going to link to a few of them down below, but it's just best to check out what you're currently getting in each country you're buying from to see the best deals that you can get. Now, design is next, and it would be silly to not start with the Nothing 3a Pro, since it is by far the most unique design of them all. It has this circuit board type design on the back of the phone, along with these glyphs, which can be used for notifications or countdown timers. It also has a few integrations with apps like Uber that shows you how close it is to arriving. And it's just a pretty cool and unique thing that no other phone has. And if you are the type that does just throw a case on their phone, then there are some cases, both official and third-party cases, that still show off those glyphs. Now, overall, the Nothing phone is reasonably comfortable to hold. If anything, it's a tad big in the hand for someone with, I guess, average size hands. But then you do get a larger screen as well. You've got the volume buttons on one side and then the power on the other side, along with what they're calling their essential space button, which we'll talk about more shortly. Now, it is plastic around the edges with a glass front and a glass back, and excluding the essentials button with the button layout, it is very similar to an iPhone with the power button on the opposite side of the volume rockers, which I kind of prefer, but with the Essentials button in quite a low position, I get confused between this and the power button so often. And the position also just means that you will accidentally trigger it like all the time when picking up your phone. Now the Samsung A56 also has a very familiar design. It looks very similar to the flagship like non-Ultra S series phones like the S25, S24. Again, glass front, glass back, but with aluminium rails this time, which does make it feel a touch more premium than the Nothing 3A Pro. The iPhone 16e keeps its very usual and premium iPhone design, a volume rocker on one side, the power on the other, plus you get an action button which can be customized, finished off with a glass front, a glass back, and with a size that I would definitely say is easier to manage than either the Nothing or the Samsung A56. And then we have the Pixel 9a, which I would probably say looks the most premium design of all the four phones here. Although if you do notice any bumps or scratches in any of my footage here, that's because I managed to drop this phone on my patio floor from like a couple of feet, which did do a little damage, so yay for that. But I didn't do anything to the front glass or that really nice frosted back as well. You've got aluminium rails as well on the side, along with the power buttons and the volume on that one side. And continuing on to the display now with the Pixel 9a, it is a 6.3 inch 120Hz display, which goes up to 2700 nits peak brightness. It's protected with Corning Gorilla Glass 3. It has a single camera at the top, an always-on display, and a fingerprint sensor, which we'll cover off in a moment. I think the biggest thing I notice when comparing the Pixel with others for this video is the bezels around the edge of the display are noticeably thicker than the competition. Now the iPhone 16e is a smaller screen at 6.1 inch. It is a 60Hz display, which is the only phone in this entire lineup that's not 120Hz, if that matters to you. It only goes up to 800 peak nits or 1200 in HDR, which is, again, way less than the Pixel, but does have a tougher ceramic shield on the front. And you have a notch on the 16e, which houses the front-facing camera and the Face ID hardware. Now the Nothing 3A Pro has a 120Hz 6.77 inch display, which is the largest here, which also reaches 1300 nits and up to 3000 nits in HDR. It does also come with a pre-installed screen protector, which none of the others do here. However, I did have to remove this literally in the first few days of using it because it collects so much dust and fingerprints and marks. It just, honestly, it just ruins the experience for me. There we go. And then we have the Galaxy A56, which is a 6.7 inch 120Hz display. You've got Gorilla Glass Victus Plus on the front, 1200 nits peak brightness with up to 1900 in HDR. So the Nothing 3A Pro offers you the biggest screen. The Pixel 9a is the brightest in non-HDR use. And so it just really depends here on what you want in a phone. Now, in terms of unlocking your phone for day-to-day use, as well as, other things which like banking apps, password managers, then the iPhone has Face ID and the Pixel also has Face Unlock, which does then extend to not just unlocking the device, but also those third-party apps. Outside of that, the iPhone doesn't have a fingerprint sensor under the display or anything like that. The Pixel does, but it's an optical fingerprint sensor, which means that it blasts a very bright light at your finger each time. Like generally this is okay, but it does have its disadvantages. I did find that unlocking can be slower on the Pixel 9a, whereas the Samsung and the Nothing 3A Pro also have an optical sensor, but I just found them generally faster and more reliable than the Pixel 9a. Although the Nothing 3A Pro's sensor is really low down, so it can be quite awkward. You have to readjust your grip sometimes to unlock it. On to performance now. Performance is really important in a phone, and generally speaking, it is difficult to buy a flagship phone nowadays that performs badly. And whilst these aren't flagships, they are all very capable phones. But considering that these are all priced very similarly, it is surprising to see a noticeable difference in their performance. I would say the Pixel 9a and 16e have flagship chips in them, the Tensor G4 and the Apple A18 chip, whereas the A56 has the Exynos 1580 and the Nothing has, it's only last year's, but it's the Snapdragon 7S Gen 3 chip. And from using these phones heavily over the last few weeks, properly using all of these phones, the Samsung is definitely slower than the others. The Nothing 3A Pro also struggles in some tasks. For me, it's between the Pixel and the iPhone they're both very, very good. Now for me on the Nothing phone, this only really happened when trying to multitask, posting to Instagram in the background whilst navigating around the phone, especially editing videos, even minor edits when you're trying to trim the beginning ends of a clip. That took a very long time for it to process. Whereas the Samsung, I just find at times it can be just browsing around the phone, it can be sluggish. So it's definitely noticeable, especially, like I said, when compared with the Pixel 9a and the 16e. Now, in terms of camera samples, I'm going to show you a few photos and videos whilst I talk to you about this video sponsor, Husqvarna. And great news, we have a heat wave here in the UK, which means it's just about to reach 20 degrees Celsius. So that means barbecues, water fights, hot tub evenings, and also getting back to the chore of looking after the garden. Now, I've actually owned one of their Nera 400 series automowers for a year now, since we did a video with them last year, and it has basically taken over my weekly chore of mowing the lawn. It just frees up so much time for me. I'd much rather be spending time with my family during these very, very rare days of sunshine here. It doesn't need any guide wires since it uses satellite for positioning, and I can still control where it mows. Like right now, one thing I haven't been able to escape is reseeding a corner of the lawn due to some landscaping we had done. So I've been able to edit the map to have it just completely avoid cutting that section. And I know, I saw the comments on the last video about the cost and what it might do to your lawn compared to one that, collects the cuttings. All I have to say is my lawn looks great. I don't have any moss growing, and I would rather be having fun, spending time with my family than cutting the lawn. What it does have is the edge cut feature, which helps keep even the edges trimmed short. It has an app to control it, change schedules. It also avoids bigger objects and has an adjustable cutting height. And also it integrates with various home automation platforms, which I'll talk about more in a video that's coming up soon. And recently, all of their Nera range has been updated to cut stripes and patterns into the lawn, which all again is done in the app, just via a software update, and something I plan to use going forward. So just follow the link down below to find out more, and a huge thank you to Husqvarna for sponsoring this portion of the video. So overall, for the cameras, honestly, they're all pretty good for their price points. The iPhone has only a single main camera. The Pixel 9a has a 48 megapixel main and a 13 megapixel ultra wide. The Samsung also adds a 5 megapixel macro lens to that. And the Nothing 3A Pro has a 50 megapixel main, 8 megapixel ultra wide, plus a 50 megapixel periscope zoom lens. Now, the only areas I really want to highlight here is that the Samsung really doesn't look great when zoomed in all the way when compared to pretty much all the others. 1x, 2x. Then we also have extra options for 4x and then 10x. And the Nothing 3A Pro with that periscope zoom really does just stand out when shooting from a distance. And really, honestly, the iPhone feels quite limiting with its single camera. I'd say the Pixel, I think, really feels strongest in the camera to me. But I know it's all personal preference here. I do prefer the iPhone for the video side of things out of all these options, but maybe let me know down below which one you prefer. Okay, this is testing the selfie camera on both of the phones. This is the Pixel and the Nothing phone. There's a lot of loads of glare coming from the Nothing phone here compared to the Pixel. We get a little bit of glare from the sun up there, but it's just wow, lines and lines of it on the front here. That's crazy amounts. And then same again, here we are testing the iPhone and the Samsung phone, and a bit of lens flare from the sun. Nothing as crazy as the Nothing phone, but very different results. On the screen, the iPhone is really, the shirt I'm wearing is really red, whereas on the Samsung phone, it looks really washed out on the Samsung phone here. It is closer to at least on the screen, it's closer to the iPhone. One of the biggest differences between these phones, though, of course, is the software. And this is one of the areas where I really need to pick carefully, because whatever I choose is going to be where my son starts building his ecosystem of other products like headphones and tablets and so on. So of course you have that high level iOS versus Android discussion here, in which case iOS offers a much simpler interface that many people won't have any issues with. And since the phone itself is very fast, very responsive, it is really it's effortless to navigate around. Face ID also makes the experience pretty seamless with other applications such as parcel managers, banking apps. And with Apple Pay, it's more likely to support your bank cards when, over with Samsung Pay or Google Pay. I do still run into issues sometimes where my bank doesn't work with those accounts, which can be quite frustrating. Now, as far as family features go, this is the only part of iOS that I really don't find it intuitive. You can access parental controls in the screen time section under settings, whereas Android has this split into a whole separate app called Family Link to manage everything, which I just feel is a much more natural way than scrolling through like the settings on your iPhone to change things. The Google Pixel 9a has Pixel's flavor of Android, which I personally really like. Like the UI is pretty flawless, plenty of options for customization, only if you want to go down that rabbit hole. You also do get a bunch of exclusive Pixel features like a call screen, which can then answer incoming calls for you and ask it who's calling. Then live transcribe what they actually say to you before you decide if you actually want to answer the call or not. There's also Call Assist, which can actually hold for you whilst you then put the phone down, get on with whatever you're doing, and then it will call you back when you're at the front of a queue. And it just helps you navigate these, auto assistant queues instead of, again, having to wait and listen to all the options. Plus, similar to Apple, you have this Pixel-like ecosystem of products. You've got Buds, the Pixel tablet, which my kid already uses. It is very, very similar to the Samsung phone in that respect. You have the whole Samsung ecosystem, One UI also, which is arguably one of the most popular and best flavors of Android. Loads of integrations there with the Samsung ecosystem, with other Samsung products. I actually made a whole video about the Samsung ecosystem, which I'll link down below to see what it's capable of. And then you have the Nothing phone, which is a very different flavor of Android with its Nothing OS. It's very clean, very minimal. I did find a few UI bugs where stuff just didn't work as expected, with widgets didn't fit properly. And also when jumping between apps, I noticed my Instagram post photos were getting moved when trying to copy information between them. But you can strip Nothing OS right back to this super minimalistic theme if you really like that sort of thing. And that's not including the various AI features too, because it's 2025, got to talk about AI. So the iPhone is built for Apple Intelligence, which at this stage doesn't really give you much other than some basic writing tools and the ability to create your own emojis. And just all in all, I find Siri and Apple Intelligence just pretty useless. It mishears me all the time. Then it will send some stuff to ChatGPT, in which case I just find most of the time it's just better remapping the action button to launching ChatGPT and skipping out Siri entirely. It is kind of embarrassing now how far Apple are behind, and when you look at the competition now. And in terms of the competition, all Android phones, so the Nothing, Pixel and the Samsung phones, all get Google Gemini, which in my opinion is getting very, very good. Now you can use it like ChatGPT, and you can use it as your fitness or nutrition coach, ask it general questions. And I love the recent Gemini Live feature where you can just share your camera and have this whole conversation with it while showing it certain things. It is legitimately really useful. Again, we did a video all about Gemini a month back, so I'll link to that one down below in the video description. And then the Nothing Phone 3a has this extra button, which they call the Essential Space. And this does show some promise. Now, the idea here is that you can tap it to take a screenshot, and then you can write a note about what it was, or you can push and hold the button to take a screenshot along with a recording of a short audio note about what it is. This is the instructions for the Husqvarna integration for the video. Make sure we follow everything in this guide. And this is basically designed in, I guess, two parts. The first part is to keep your screenshots away from cluttering up your camera roll. And the second part, which I discovered recently on a trip to Manchester United, is genuinely a useful way to stay organized. So by using the Essential Space, I stored the trip's itinerary, match tickets, train tickets, and it then uses AI to pull information from those screenshots and then adds reminders for you. So not once in my entire trip did I have to go searching for anything in my emails like I usually have to. Instead, I just fired up the Essential Space and it knew exactly what information I needed next. Super useful. If only the button wasn't in a really awkward position that means it gets constantly hit by mistake. I feel like having it positioned further up would be more of an obvious choice. Now, in terms of battery life and charging for each of these phones, so the iPhone has the smallest battery at 4,005 milliamp hours with 7.5 watts wireless and 15 watt wide charging. The Nothing 3A Pro has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery with 50 watt wired charging and no wireless charging. There's no wireless charging on it whatsoever. The Samsung Galaxy A56 also 5,000 milliamps with 45 watt wired and no wireless charging. But the Pixel 9a has the biggest 5,100 milliamp hours with a slower 23 watt wired and 7.5 watt wireless charging. Now, in terms of real world usage, again, like I said, I've been using these phones constantly for the last few weeks. I was quite surprised with the Nothing Phone 3A. Like, I genuinely tried to get it empty every single day and I just couldn't. It is super strong battery. And a similar story with the Pixel 2. I've sometimes gone a couple of days without charging this phone with, light usage. So I would say they are all very close, and generally speaking, you're still going to want to charge them at the end of every day if you want to, get through a full second day. Now, a few miscellaneous things right now. Now, in terms of water protection, the iPhone and the Pixel 9a win with an IP68 protection. The Galaxy phone is IP67, and then the Nothing phone at IP64, which does mean that of all of these phones, the Nothing is the only phone that won't survive being fully submerged in water. It only takes rain and jets and sprays and that kind of stuff, which is very important if you plan on taking this with you, family holidays to the beach, swimming pool, hot tubs, that kind of thing. And then in terms of ongoing updates, the Pixel and the iPhone kind of leading the way here with 7 years on the Pixel, and nothing official, but generally speaking between 5 to 7 years on the iPhone. Samsung is also up there with 6 years, but nothing is promising just 3 years, which really does fall short compared to the competition. So this is where there really isn't a right answer here. Everyone's going to like different things about different phones. So for me and my son's first phone, I actually decided to go ahead with the Pixel 9a. And actually, I like this phone so much, or rather I like the trading deals so much, that I actually traded in both my old Samsung and the old Pixel phone. So now I have this sort of his and hers matching Pixel. Maybe when my daughter's old enough, we'll see. But I love that it is basically a flagship phone. You get great cameras, great performance. It's already survived a drop onto concrete, so that's also quite promising. And it's Android, which means no locked-in Apple ecosystem. So way more freedom to work with other devices. But that might not be your choice. You might prefer the design of the Nothing phone enough to sway you, or see the iPhone 16e or the Samsung phone as an affordable way into the Apple or the Samsung experiences. So just let me know using the comments down below, and I'll leave you with a few more camera samples.
So don't